Hello, everyone, and welcome to our little virtual field trip. Today, we're taking a trip to the Fernbank Museum in Atlanta. And while it's home to the dinosaurs, we're not going to be looking at that today. We're going to be exploring their Mayan exhibit. So, we're going to learn a little bit about the Mayans and their culture and how they lived. Hopefully this goes slow enough so that you can see, but this is a bowl, a ring, and at the end there's a vase created by Maya artists, and usually they would have like these labels and it would help increase the value of it. If an artist gifted you something with your name on it personally inscribed, it would give it more value and more sentimental and make you feel a little bit more special. What we can see here are these things called stelas. They are these large slabs of wood that were carved or sometimes painted in order to create memorials for battles or for people, and they would have all these cool different designs on them. You can see how tall they are right here. They're super tall, sort of as a way to communicate with their gods. This panel comes from the Sac Sea, which is one of the several kingdoms that battled along today's Guatemala and Mexico border. No one really knows the location or where they were located, but this panel tells the story of the Sac Sea's ruler after being defeated in battle by the Lamar kingdom, captured Lamar's ruler and beheaded him. What you can see here are called codices. Maya scribes recorded their knowledge in these books. They were usually made from tree bark paper and painted with glyphs and images. Each codex would fold up like an accordion to make it easier to, put away. Thousands of these books once existed, but now there's only little bits and pieces that we can find. They each contained predictions based on the calendar cycles. They're a bit like our Farmer's Almanac, and a lot of people believed that they contained superstition and lies of the devil. So Bishop Diego de Landa ordered the destruction of the Maya codices in 1562. They burned them all, which they eventually regretted. What a difference a day makes. So right here, it tells us that in the Maya Hab calendar, a new year could only begin on one of 4 days, Kan, Muluk, Ix, or Kawak. Each of these year bearers brought specific qualities to the year ahead and had its own associated direction and patron deity. The Mayan observed different ceremonies for each year bearer. In these little figurines, we can see that they were part of the Muluk year ceremonies. They would contain warriors, women with cloth covered faces, and animals that could move between worlds. They are a part of a group of 4 sets of figurines that were 28 inches tall that archaeologists found inside of a large urn. So right here, we're going to be seeing some hieroglyphs. Sometime before 8200, the Maya created this written language of more than 800 hieroglyphs. But after the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, not many people understood these symbols. Through the hieroglyphs, we are able to see the stories of the ancient Maya in their own words. So right here, we are able to see different hieroglyphs. It gives us a short description as well. This one talks about Friar Diego de Landa and his followers and how they burned thousands of Maya bark paper books, which ironically enough, he went on to write account of the affairs of Yucatan, which was also shown there. In this one, we see more hieroglyphs and another small description of what they looked like in 1832. In the 1880s, they looked like this, and it talks about the Dresden Codex, which is shown there. Librarian Ernst Forstemann decoded the astronomy tables used to determine dates, such as when to wage war. He also cracked the system for measuring time in which a date occurs every 52 years. This is the 1930s. The next one is... Here's the hieroglyphs here. Is 1952 is the one that follows it. Russian linguist Yuri Knorosov realized that, like a letter in an English word, each symbol in a Maya glyph has its own sound. In 1958, here you can see this, and people studied photographs of the ruins at Piedras Negras, and they noticed that the first stela in each group of monuments showed a seated king. Glyphs on the following stelas told the story of his life. A lot of people thought that each Mayan symbol represented only one sound, but David Stewart realized that many glyphs represent whole phrases and they can be drawn in different ways as long as they contain signs for all of the right sounds. Today, research study modern Maya languages to help decode ancient glyphs. Knowing the sounds of Maya words help them discover the meanings of ancient writings. What we can see here is an altar. This is altar Q. It's unique in presenting a complete list, including the names of all the rulers in Copen's last dynasty. Archaeologists usually find altars all over major Maya sites. They commemorated important occasions and served as the settings for elaborate sacrifices, including human offerings to the gods. This one is quite interesting because it displays 16 royal portraits in chronological order. The west side shows the first king of Copen passing his staff to power to Yak's Passage, Chan Yopasat, the 16th and final ruler. The image shows that the ruler 16th, who commissioned Altar Q, received his right to rule directly from Copen's founder. This altar is also very interesting because ruler 16 made sure to bury 15 jaguars, one for each of the rulers that came before him, in a masonry crypt below it. Other Maya leaders also hid similar powerful offerings beneath the stelas and ball courts and inside pyramids. As we can see here, this is a small recreation of what a Mayan city would look like, or what it did look like. Even though they lived almost 1200 years ago, it didn't mean that they didn't have challenges such as the ones that we may have nowadays. In response, they created systems to supply food and water, move people and goods, and build and also rebuild structures. What we can see here is someone rebuilding a pot. So archaeologists usually collect pieces of pots called potsherds at their field sites. In the lab, they then try to reconstruct the complete pot to see what it would have looked like back then. So what we're going to see here is a bunch of little gifts that Mayan rulers would exchange for jewelry, pottery, and other rare objects and materials. Exchanging these valuable gifts helped create relationships and build alliances. The gifts could be as small as cacao beans to a large pendant. While today these Maya sites are shown as gray stone buildings, back then they used to be very colorful. These pyramids were used sort of as a way to declare the divine right of rulers who lived in these palaces. They were filled with color, as we can see here. And yeah, it just helped show sort of who lived there and what their role was. I thought this part of the exhibit was very, very cool. So it talks about the way that Mayas would build ceilings. They would lay blocks in sort of these stepped courses or lines that eventually met at the top, a shape called the corbelled vault. It was easy to build and it helped rooms stay cool. Right here, we can see it's sort of an underground place where the people or the rulers were buried sometimes. They were usually buried with their most important materials. When we clicked on this button, we were able to see where the body was buried because it lights up. So right here, this is where the body would have been. Right here, it tells us about different objects that they were buried with, including some plates and, to help them with their transition to wherever it was they were going. Right here, we can see some archaeologists discovered a ritual deposit or cache, and that was placed directly above a ruler's grave. It contained 3 pairs of bowls filled with sacred offerings. Some glyphs that were painted on these vessels revealed the ruler's name, which was Yak's Topo, or the Great Scrolled Skull. What I found very interesting is the way that Mayans would use jewelry to elevate their status. So the more jewelry you had and the more accessories you wore, that meant that you were of a higher status and you had more privilege in the community. Another thing that helped prove the mark of status was clothing. So, monuments and murals show Maya elites wearing layers of brocaded or painted clothing, feathers, and pelts, and that really helped elevate their status as well. During this time, Maya dentists would use bow drills in order to create small holes in the teeth in order for Maya men and women to decorate them with precious materials. They would also file the teeth into different shapes in order to mark a rite of passage or a coming of age. Today, many Mayas still make offerings to their ancestors and commemorate events and family ceremonies. Some families keep altars on the eastern sides of their houses. Until the late 1900s, the Lacandan Maya in Mexico also maintained god houses and god pots, traditions that recall the shrines and face caches of ancient Caracol.
Have their roots in the Mayan culture. Now you can say, yes, I'm Mayan. Before, you will say, I'm Guatemalan. But before we're Guatemalan, we're Mayan.
I hope you enjoyed this small tour of the Mayan exhibit at the Fernbank Museum. I wish I could have shown you so much more, but for now, this is it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. Bye!